This is Tell Me Exactly, an emergency communications podcast. My name is Bobby Benton, and I'll be your host today. And today we're talking about dispatching cold calls for police. I'm pleased to introduce two gentlemen here, Chief of Implementation, Jason Barbour with Priority Dispatch, as well as Police Protocol Expert, Mark von Behren. Glad to have each one of you.
Thank you for having me.
Glad to be here, Bobby.
Tell me exactly what our audience needs to know about cold calls in police practices. Jason, first of all, what is a cold call?
Great question, Bobby. The cold call principle that's in the police protocol is a huge benefit for dispatching police calls. When you sit back and analyze your call volume aspects of a police call, a good percentage of your calls come in when the event is completely over and a certain amount of time has elapsed and the threat to your caller is no longer present. And those are the conditions that open up the potential for the protocol to treat this event as a cold call. So going in a little more detail about what a cold call is, there's a few requirements. The first requirement is the agency gets the option to identify how much time needs to expire once an event has completely stopped. The event's over, and how much time does the agency like to have expire before they can label that event a past event. In other words, it's not in progress. It didn't just happen. It is completely a past event. And then another requirement in order for the protocol to treat it as a cold call philosophy is the suspect personal vehicle has to be confirmed to not be in the presence of your caller or not on the scene, i.e. the threat to your caller is not there. So if those two factors are in play and have been verified through the protocol, then the EPD protocol version 7 will then give the agency the ability to process that as a cold call, which means the protocol really gates back the quantity of questions just based on the facts. The event's over plus a period of time and the threat to your caller is there. There's really no need to do a thorough interrogation to your citizen via the 911 center. Just pretty much get the facts of the event, dispatch your resources there, and let them do their investigation or start building their probable cause while they're having a direct contact with the caller, not through 911.
So my understanding of what you just said is that the agency determines that time period?
Absolutely. The agency has two options. They can have a universal time frame for all police incidents, or we do have the ability for them to go into a lot more detail and define that time frame based off of each chief complaint in the police protocol.
Oh wow, that's really great. You said that it will also change the amount of questions they ask?
Absolutely. If the call has met the conditions in the eyes of the protocol as a cold call event, then the protocol automatically, the call taker doesn't have to do this on their own, the protocol automatically will remove several questions that are not necessary when the facts are the event's over plus X, the agency defines X, and the threat to your caller is no longer there.
Well, you know that in our centers, we have plenty of downtime, don't we?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And so, with that in mind, jokingly around with that is, if we can limit the number of questions that we ask, that's going to benefit the call center.
Absolutely, because I'm sure a lot of our call centers today are experiencing staffing challenges or their call volume is drastically increased. So having a good percentage of their law enforcement calls coming in are probably over a period of time and the threat's no longer there, then we don't need to spend a lot of time on the call with the citizen. Let's pretty much get the facts of the call, dispatch it, and let's answer the next call coming in.
Oh, that sounds great. Mark, with this, how have you seen the difference in dispatching or call centers dispatch differently because of a cold call?
Again, Bobby, going back to what the chief had said just a moment ago, that agency is identifying this past event, cold call event, where there's no suspect person or vehicles on scene. And in the example of 111 for damage or vandalism or mischief, then there's actually no questions to be asked because it's a past event and there's no suspect there. So we're speeding up the opportunities for questions to not be asked and turning that dispatch time around. And again, it's a not in progress event.
So you're not asking any questions that our officers would normally ask? Is it because there's not a need for it to get them there because the threat's gone and this happened whatever time they decided to be a past event?
Right. So we're going to go from the case entry, our 6 questions on case entry, and it helps. Question number 6 helps us in case entry identify that cold call, that past event. And again, there's no suspect, person, or vehicles on scene. Time has elapsed, whatever time that agency has decided to use. Again, what the chief had mentioned, and but that doesn't eliminate the possibility of any post-dispatch instructions, and then also in our case exit. So there's going to be additional things mentioned there, but not necessarily any key questions in the protocol to be asked.
Chief, got a question for you, sir. And you're in the 911 center. I think all of our listeners will agree with me that we were real busy. We wear multiple hats, if you want to say. We've got call taking going on. We got dispatch going on. We got NCIC checks. We've got records, admin stuff. We tend to put on our investigative hat too when some of these type of calls. Is this cold call process in the police dispatch designed to relieve them from going from dispatch stage over to investigative stage and allowing the officers to do what they need to do, and we not having to do it like we've been in the past?
Absolutely. The police protocol is a dispatch protocol. It is not a probable cause building protocol. It's not an investigation protocol. It doesn't help the officers write their incident report. It is there to help the 911 center ask the questions, provide the instructions they need to dispatch an event. Now, sometimes 911 centers may have spoiled their officers by asking a lot of questions that are really crossing the line into officer investigation mode, which is a huge liability for 911 centers, because it's probably pretty safe to say that most call takers or dispatchers out in the field today are not trained, nor do they have the power of arrest. So we don't need them crossing that line and creating a potential of liability to themselves and the agency by trying to do the officer's job via the 911 center. And just keep in mind, when we treat a cold call, we have definitely taken care of officer safety by verifying the event is over and a period of time has elapsed, and the threat to your caller, where your officer is responding, the threat is gone. So it's pretty much who, what, when, where. Let's dispatch. Let's go.
That sounds great. I know through my career as a police officer that I was spoon-fed by my telecommunicators. I'll admit that. By the time I got to my call, everything was already asked there, and I turned around and re-asked the same questions to my witnesses or my victims, because I had to testify in court that they're the ones that told me this is what happened, not my telecommunicator.
Absolutely. That is why this is not an investigative protocol or probable cause building protocol. This is a dispatch protocol.
I guess, Mark, have you seen that since cold calls been in place, resources have been managed a lot better?
I would agree with that. Yes, sir, Bobby. Again, we're going back to minimal questions asked by our call takers, minimize the amount of time they're on the line with the caller, and then moving on to the next call, which may be a higher priority in nature. And again, it's not uncommon for the agencies that you and I have been to with implementations, big agencies, where they got those calls just rolling. As soon as they get off of one call, they're going to the next call. So their time is extremely valuable. And going back to, limited resources. Do they have enough call takers to handle the volume of the calls that are coming in? That frees them up, again, moving on to the next call.
But through this whole process, I'm understanding it does not divert from anything with officer safety. If there's anything that's going to relate to the officer safety, we're asking the appropriate questions.
Absolutely, and we should. If there is a potential threat there to your responders, we do not need to cut back any questions. We need all the questions we can ask to make sure we've addressed our responders' safety.
So let's say, for instance, me and my wife got into an argument last night, and she ended up hitting me and then leaving, going to her mama's house. But I got up this morning, I got to thinking about it. I said, I probably need to report this because it happened. But she's back home watching TV with the kids.
Absolutely, Bobby. That would definitely meet the requirement of most agencies' time frame of a past event. Assuming it happened last night and you're calling today, then it's definitely a past event. But the threat is back, so this cannot be treated as a cold call. Once she's back in the presence of where you are at the time you're making the call, the threat's there, and we cannot allow this to be treated as a cold call.
Even though it was yesterday.
It doesn't matter if it was 10 years ago.
Oh, that's nice to know.
Yes.
Any advice that either one of you have for 911 agencies that are listeners out here that would help them in deciding to, like the time period, for instance, because it's different from different agencies?
Absolutely, Bobby. I mean, I've been implementing police since version 1.
You've been around for a while.
I've been around for a while. Probably 10 or 12 years ago, we as Priority Dispatch were typically recommending a 30-minute time frame as your typical past event. That's where I started at my agency, with the 30-minute time frame. And I think through the years and through analyzing a lot of calls that agencies have processed through the system, we've kind of come to the consensus that maybe 30 minutes is too big of a time window. So at my agency, we went down from 30 to 15, and then we went down to 10 minutes. And when you start shortening that window, then that increases the potential of your call volume to be in the cold call category, which means shorter dispatch times, shorter on-call times for your agency. But you got to remember, every agency is different. That's why we allow them to come up with their own time frame. They can either stick to one universal time frame, or they can go to each chief complaint and have a different time established for that chief complaint. And just keep in mind, the call taker or their staff does not have to memorize this time frame. Our software, our ProQA software, will put an info box up on the screen and remind the staff, for this particular chief event, the agency has defined the past time frame interval to be X. And we do have some agencies that, for, let's say, your higher acuity events, like a domestic, they may have a longer time frame for that versus damage to property or a theft. If you're an agency that's getting a call from a business, somebody shoplifted, got in their car and has been gone, and they've been gone, let's say 10 minutes. Obviously, that is a time frame of 10 minutes, and the threat's no longer there. You could easily connect the dots that if somebody shoplifted and the time the call was placed, it happened 10 minutes ago. For whatever reason, they didn't call us till 10 minutes after the event. The threat's gone. That suspect's not coming back. So, that's when an example of when an agency may have a shorter time frame for identifying past versus a domestic. You could have a domestic where one of the parties has left, but there's a high potential they might come back. So we need to make sure that the window of that time frame for a past event might be a little bit greater than, say, 10 minutes.
Well, that makes sense.
And if I could expand upon what the chief said, Bobby, exactly what he said on that theft scenario, if you were to go to that protocol 130 for theft, in the scenario, again, the chief mentioned, there'd only be one key question asked. What did he or she take or attempt to take? There's other options down there, too, in purple, jurisdictionally approved questions, but only one question that would have to be asked under that cold call element that the chief mentioned.
Well, from what I'm understanding, too, is that a cold call can actually be for an element for officer safety, too, because their initial response heading to that call would not be running lights and sirens. It'll be just probably normal traffic and maybe not even any kind of hurry to get to that call according to their individual agency's policy.
You bring up a very good point, Bobby. Again, just bear in mind how an agency responds to an event is totally outside the police protocol. Our EPD protocol does not come in and dictate or mandate any type of response, number of resources, or the manner they respond. But an agency could easily connect the dots. If this has been identified as a cold call, which this is probably a single unit response, normal traffic. Let's don't run everybody off the road and cause any type of risk of injuring somebody responding to an event that's completely over and a period of time has elapsed and there's no threat there. But just one caveat is just remember that's totally 100% up to the agency.
Well, for our listeners that's out there, just in summary, can y'all just put in a layman's term exactly what we're looking at for as far as a cold call?
This cold call principle in the police protocol is helping address 911 centers of not having to ask or be on the phone for an extended period of times for events that don't warrant that. And I would just encourage agencies to stay in close contact with their law enforcement agencies and educate them on what a cold call is first, and have them in the decision-making process of helping you identify how long ago for each one of these types of events are we okay in identifying that period of time.
That sounds great.
I think it's an excellent opportunity for any agency, again, to minimize the amount of resources necessary for something that's a past event, Bobby. And it's an awesome opportunity for the agency to define their terms, as the chief had said, as far as the times and which protocols are going to use to do that with.
That sounds awesome, gentlemen. Well, I would like to thank y'all for joining me today. I've totally enjoyed my time with you, and it's been very, very informational for me, and also for our listeners out there. And for our listeners out there, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, give us a 5-star rating wherever you get your podcasts. Let us know what you did like. Subscribe and be sure to follow us on our Instagram, our Facebook at Tell Me Exactly. To get the latest on all things emergency communications, you can visit our website at tellmeexactly.prioritydispatch.net to submit questions for our experts to answer. Tell Me Exactly is a Priority Dispatch Corporation podcast. It's developed by our team of protocol experts and is regularly hosted by Meredith Jensen. I'm Bobby Benton, serving as a guest host with Cody Ekman as producer, Reading Roberts as sound engineer, and Scott Robertson and Jason Barbour as executive producer.